Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Good to see your power pauses are already in mid-season form.
2025, baby.
We had a morning where it was just kind of like, I used to know how to do all of this stuff, and I've completely forgotten. Everyone, we had some great pregame shows last year, but listen, we're taking down the banners for the great pregame shows from last year. We're starting from scratch, and seems appropriate for the spring game that it's like, well, it feels like this is a promising start to the season, but also I'm still a little bit nervous that I'm going to screw something up.
Well, I'd like you to do the routine things routinely, but you're having trouble with that.
Clearly.
I'm a little late getting to the stadium. Look, it's spring for everybody. This is just, don't judge us based on this one show. This is just one of 15 spring shows, one of 45 total spring Buckeye Weekly or spring Buckeye Weeklies over the course of the entire practice season. So relax. Don't make too much of this one unless it's awesome. Then make a lot of it.
Yeah,
Tell your friends and family about it. Everybody, welcome. We are here in the Ohio State Media Press Box, getting ready for kickoff, if there's a kickoff, in about 3 hours, a little under 3 hours, as we're here for the spring game. It is sunny as all get out here. Maybe a little chilly, but don't let that stop you from getting here and enjoying the show, Tom. What do you think about the spring game? No,
you guys say talk about it. That's how you do it. We were here yesterday for the last practice, and boy, it was cold here yesterday. And this is, you're probably mostly from the Midwest. You know the difference between, like, here's what the temperature says. That number can mean one thing if it is sunny and not windy, and it can mean a very different thing if it is cloudy and windy. And it was cloudy and windy yesterday, and oh boy, it was a little brisk in here. Today, I think the number might have actually been lower than it was yesterday, but it felt so much better, and it's supposed to warm up to like the 50s, so it should be a really nice day.
Yeah, I mean, you can wear sleeves. You don't have to go everywhere. Guns out, suns out, guns out. You can wear sleeves and watch this one, and see your first good long look at the Ohio State quarterback battle, which I assume is what most people are going to want to watch, because anytime you've got a quarterback battle, the spring game is something that sticks with people and it allows them to either have some of what they've heard be confirmed, or some of what they believe to be confirmed, all of which is still, it's just one practice. And there's evidence of great spring game performances that led to, that also coincided with a great season from that person, but also poor spring game performances that had nothing to do with a great season for that person as well. But at least you get to see, you get to learn more about all of these players. You get to see Julian Sayin running with the ones. You get to see Lincoln Kienholz running with the ones without running for his life as he did against Missouri. And then you get to see Tavien St. Clair for the first time, which there's a ton of excitement around him as well. But I think maybe most of all, Tom, maybe they'll get to see why Ryan Day and Brian Hartline don't seem to have any worries about the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I think this is one of these days where spring games, I think, tend to, you end up with some confirmation bias, where if you come in thinking, I think the quarterbacks are very young and they're very talented, and while they're going to ultimately work out, there's still some stuff to work through because they're young, but they're talented. And they will make some plays today that you will go, hey, look at that, what an arm, this is going to be, boy, they have multiple really good options here. And then there will be a throw where you go, what was he possibly looking at? They're young, they're too young, they don't know what they're doing, it's never going to work. And you can it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure. You can kind of look at what you're seeing and draw whatever conclusion you want to. And the truth is probably going to be a little bit somewhere in between, where last year you had Will Howard, and Will Howard during the spring game didn't look particularly good. And then he did exactly what Ohio State needed him to do. Now, he also had, it felt like, one interception a game that you were like, or one, trying to do too much and just like falling down and tossing the ball backwards, and it's like, what are you doing? And so you can kind of draw your own conclusions there as well. You're not going to get perfection today. It's never perfection for the spring game. I think a realistic expectation for the spring game is the defense is usually ahead of the offense this time of year. That's one of those old truisms you've been hearing for 40 years, and you keep hearing it because it's true. Even with a somewhat young defense for Ohio State. The defense is probably still ahead of the offense just because the offense has there's so much timing stuff and there's so much, real fine, minute execution kind of stuff that even after 15 practices, it's going to look a heck of a lot better than it did practice 1, practice 2. But you're still not in mid-season form. You're not even in game 1 form yet. And, you think about when do teams improve the most between game 1 and game 2? Well, you got a long way to go to get to game 1. And as we saw last year, all you have to do is you have to play well enough during the regular season, put yourself in a position to be able to be the hottest team at the end of the season. That's, the spring game, you should be at 0.0% panic levels during the spring game because there is so much to go before the season even starts. And even once the season starts, it's only kind of like, well, these games are fun and they're important, but they don't really matter. Who's the best team in September or October doesn't matter nearly as much as what happened.
We'll do it live. Oh,
all right, there we go.
Hey,
so
we're back up here though.
Okay. No, we're not.
Okay.
Anyway,
so here
we're
back. So I was going to say, go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. We'll get to them. You mentioned the improvement from game 1 to game 2. I guarantee that's going to happen. They're going to look much better in game 2 than they do against game 1. When you start the season with Texas, and then game 2 is Grambling.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the games, the spring games that I always cite is the Justin Fields in 2019. And I'm pulling up the box score here, Tom. He was 4 of 13 for 131 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. As we know, the 98-yarder to Benjamin Victor. Matthew Baldwin was 21 for 36 for like 240 yards in that one, to give you an idea of when and when not to make too much of a spring game performance. But you still get an opportunity to watch these guys and see why the buzz. And I think each of these guys will have that, will show, oh, I see it. And then you'll see where maybe a deep out is falls to the ground and is too short. And then you're like, oh, I can also see why there's so much up and down throughout the course of the spring. And so that'll be fun for you. Let's stay in the backfield, though, Tom, because I think people should be looking forward to seeing a bunch of new running backs. You lose Tavien Henderson, you lose Quinshon Judkins. You got to see James Peoples a little bit last year. And one of the unfortunate things about spring ball, the spring game, is the running backs can only do so much. It's thud. Once you get touched, you're down. So they tend to throw the ball a little bit, but also they ran the ball like 52 times or something last year. So it just really depends. Like, are they trying to – the second half, is it just run, because you got the running clock and you're ready to go home. But you don't get to see the full force of the running backs. But I still think you'll be impressed by what you see from James Peoples and Bo Jackson. And I'm interested to see more of what we see from C.J. Donaldson.
Well, and I think also some of it is going to depend on how much is thud and how much is live. Because they're going to – in previous years, they've done a drive or two of thud. And then the guys who are, this year the version is probably Jeremiah Smith and, Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles. Those guys are probably mostly coming out at that point. And then everyone's live after that, except for maybe, usually the quarterbacks are not live. So at that point, the running game becomes a little more interesting to me. In the years where it's been thud most of the way through, the running game becomes a complete afterthought. And this year, I don't know. I don't know how you balance that, because obviously during the season they want to make sure they're staying balanced. If you're trying to evaluate the quarterbacks, you want to see the quarterbacks reading the defenses and making throws and all that kind of stuff. But you also want the defense to have to give the offense an honest look where they don't know that it's going to be all throws. So I would guess you're going to see a decent number of runs. But last year the leading rusher was Sam Williams-Dixon, right? So that's lots of rushes in the second half. And I think James Peoples had a bunch of carries last year. And so it's probably going to be more run in the second half, less run in the first half. But, as far as who I'm interested to see, James Peoples, I think people have a sense like, hey, this guy's pretty good. C.J. Donaldson is the new guy, so that's always exciting, the transfer from West Virginia. Let me tell you, we've been talking about him a few times. Bo Jackson has really flashed a few times, and how much Bo Jackson plays this year is going to be contingent on all the stuff that's not the wow, he looked really good running the football. It's going to be, can they trust him in blitz pickup? How does he do there? How does he do just pass pro in general and
what's
catching
his
the
ball
ball?
security?
Yes,
like?
ball security. I mean, all that kind of stuff. That's not just like, wow, this guy looks pretty fast and explosive and runs hard, and they're looking at stuff like pad level and all that kind of stuff too. But man, there's just so many other things that go into that decision. But I have a feeling after the spring game today, we are not going to be, I feel like we're talking about Bo Jackson so much more than anyone else is right now. This is a day where you might hear a lot more people talking about Bo Jackson after the game as opposed to now.
Yeah. With the receivers, I don't know how many people, I don't know what we'll get to see from Jeremiah. I feel like if they want to give the crowd a show, he's probably going to play like 2 series. When he's out there, don't have a safety over top.
Sorry.
Don't have a safety over top of him. Give the fans a show. Throw it deep, one-on-one coverage, see how it goes. And because I don't expect him to play long. Hell, last year, Ryan Day even said, Jeremiah's going to be one of those guys that get out pretty quickly. So that was a true freshman. So I'm sure they're going to do the same thing this year, although make it even sooner. But that doesn't mean there's going to be a lack of receivers to throw to. And, Carnell Tate will be one of those guys that plays a little bit, but not much. Bryson Rogers, Brandon Ennis will probably play a good amount. Brandon Ennis probably doesn't need to play as much, and Bryson Rogers really. I don't know how much into the second half those guys need to go, but it is not the deepest room, so somebody's going to have to play throughout the whole. They're going to have to get their snaps. But I think the one guy that I expect will make some plays today is Mylan Graham, because he's going to have a lot of opportunity to do so, and he'll probably be playing throughout. And hopefully Quincy Porter can play. We saw him yesterday with the yellow limited contact jersey, but he was still going through all most of the 7-on-7s and things like that. But they probably don't want to get him hit, so we'll see what he can do. With receivers, what are you expecting? What are you looking forward to seeing? What are you watching for?
All right, hang on one second. I'm going to try and change cameras here, so hang on one second.
Oh, you had us both.
All right,
both cameras.
Let's see.
Awesome.
Now, let us know if you can still hear us now. But, yeah, in terms of receivers, man, the young receivers, Carnell Tate, like you said, Jeremiah Smith, you kind of know what you're getting with those guys. I think Brandon Ennis is going to be someone who people are really excited to see today. I'm just kind of thinking through guys who we've kind of looked at and gone, all right, like there feels like there's a real substantial step there. He feels like he might be someone who people are excited to see, and he's not new, but he's
fresh.
As they used to say at NBC, it's not new, but it's new to you. Right. If you haven't seen him, he's new to you. So he's someone I think people will be excited to see. Quincy Porter would have been at the absolute top of my list until we saw him in a limited contact jersey yesterday. At that point, and just to be clear, there's no reason for concern whatsoever there. He was participating in practice. He was doing some stuff in some drills. It was that's just very much that's basically, if this was the regular season, you would be playing and you would have no idea anything was happening. So zero cause for concern there, but it might limit what he can do. Phillip Bell was impressive out of the slot to me. Saw a little bit of Des Jones yesterday, but Mylan Graham, man, I think Mylan Graham is probably the guy who has moved the needle the most for me this spring in that wide receiver room, because last year he really didn't play. He had no catches. He played a little bit, especially towards the end of the season, but really just in kind of garbage time. But that was really a function of he showed up in June. If you show up in June, your freshman year is basically, with rare exceptions, your freshman year is basically going to be basically a write-off. Now this spring, you've sort of started to see he had maybe the most impressive catch of the day on Friday. Lincoln Kienholz threw him a ball in the back corner of the end zone. Aaron Scott had pretty good coverage, and Mylan Graham came down with it. He's someone who I think he may be the guy who makes a play, and then everyone goes, "Whoa, boy!" And then we're putting his name in titles of shows for the next 6 months because everyone's excited about him.
Well, I mean, former 5-star wide receiver Mylan Graham, you got to put all of that together, and it's interesting because he did come in the summer last year. There is some of his game that reminds me of Chris Olave, who also came in the summer, but was able to overcome that. But he's Chris Olave, and the after the catch stuff that he can do is impressive. So you'll get an opportunity to see what he can do today. I think they're going to be pretty active with him. They have been this spring in the practices that we've seen. He's been one of the top targets. I expect that to continue in this one. Other targets, Tom, all of the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the tight ends go to put on a show. It's a spring game, it's a spring ball, and expect to see all of them involved. Jelani Thurman, this will be your first opportunity to see Max Clair. We saw Will Kaczmarek in a boot yesterday. I don't think that's anything serious, but serious enough that he's in a boot.
Yeah.
And Nate Roberts, a true freshman, made some catches yesterday. And he could be another one that you watch out for. I don't think they need him this year, but this is the time when you get to see him play.
Yeah, and Nate Roberts is someone who has the talent and the recruiting pedigree, and we saw him a little bit yesterday looking good and making some plays. But this is probably the deepest tight end room in Ohio State history. It might be the deepest tight end room in the nation. So if you're the true freshman who's 5th or 6th on the depth chart, Keenan Bailey has shown he's more than willing to play a bunch of guys, and they had plays where they had 4 tight ends on the field last year. So you're going to go play a ton of those guys, but it's going to take a lot to get down to Nate Roberts in terms of on the depth chart, even without Will Kaczmarek there. But yeah, this is a chance to get an early look at him, see what and you probably won't see a heck of a lot of him during the season, but this is a good chance to sort of, guess what, a year from now, you've got Kaczmarek, I think, is out of eligibility after this year, and so you're going to have more opportunities to see him. I'm super interested to see Max Clair today. Max Clair, the transfer from Purdue, he was considered the top transfer tight end available in the portal, had 600 yards receiving for Purdue last year. We've just not gotten to see a whole lot of him this spring. And that's a function of all sorts of different stuff, including the amount of practice we've gotten to watch and all that. But he's someone I'm going to definitely have my eye on in terms of what's the real potential there, because being the guy who is the tight end at Purdue with wide receiver talent such as mumble, voice trails off, and being the tight end at Ohio State where you're with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes and Bryson Rogers, and oh yeah, you've also got these running backs, and oh yeah, that's a very different thing. So what is the ceiling for him this year? And it feels like the answer is not 600 yards, but it could be like really crucial plays at really crucial moments rather than just like raw statistics.
Yeah, big third downs, moving the chains. Another transfer I'm interested to watch, Ethan Onianwa at left tackle, the Rice transfer. You'll notice him, he's the big guy at left tackle. We'll see how he does against the Ohio State defensive ends. And the offensive line as a whole, you'll be able to see some of these guys shifting and moving around. And I'm expecting the first team offensive line to be what it's been, pretty much maybe all of spring practice, which, well, early on it wasn't, but towards the second half of spring practice, Ethan Onianwa at left tackle, Luke Montgomery left guard, Carson Hitzman at center, Tigger Cibola at right guard, Austin Searveld at right tackle. But you'll see Ian Moore in there, you'll see Philip Daniels in there, you'll see, we've seen Jake Cook with the twos pretty consistently at left guard. And so they're moving guys around, getting guys involved. So there'll be a lot of numbers. Bring your scorecard, print out your roster so that you know all of these numbers, because there's a bunch of new guys that you haven't seen before that you'll get an opportunity to watch deal with this defensive line.
Yeah, the offensive line is somewhat unsettled. I feel like, we talked yesterday, I feel like that we have a good chance, we have a pretty good feeling for what that line might look like in the fall. But more so, beyond that, there's just so many good options there for them on the offensive line, where it's not, oh boy, who's going to play right tackle? It's who's going to play right tackle among the multiple good choices they have. One of the guys, Philip Daniels, was a starter for Minnesota last year. One of the guys, Ian Moore, was came on very strong, past some of the older guys on the depth chart, and ended up being the number 2 right tackle by the end of the season. As a true freshman, which is real unusual. And then the other choice is Austin Searveld, who, is he good enough to start on a national championship team? Well, great news. We already have the answer. He didn't start at right tackle, but he played a bunch in, rotating through the different guard positions, and they have seen enough promise from him at tackle that was something that you reported even before the spring, that they're looking at him at tackle, just because you have so many good interior guys that who's your best guy who can kick outside? Kick that guy outside. It worked great last year with Donovan Jackson, and that was really an emergency sort of situation. But you at this point they have the track record where it's like, okay, they know what it takes for someone to kick outside, and you're not doing this the week of the Penn State game. You're doing this in the spring, so you've got lots of time to continue to build those reps. You saw how much Donovan Jackson got better just from Penn State, which was like Halloween weekend, give or take, and then from there to the end of the season. If Austin Sierveld is going outside and has the whole spring and then the whole summer and the whole fall and then the whole season, like, you would imagine he's going to improve quite a bit, and he's already, it seems like, not in a terrible spot there. So, yeah, I think the offensive line might be the biggest upward, the biggest up arrow, stonks for the last 3 years in a row, where it went from, boy, this is an absolute disaster and we have to get someone in the portal or a quarterback might literally die, to, okay, pretty good even though they had a bunch of injuries, like good enough to win the national championship even though they had a bunch of injuries, and now maybe even more depth. Onyanwa, I'm really interested to see today, because very talented, projected as potentially like a second-round NFL pick if he had left for the NFL after this past season. But he's done it at Rice. And boy, there's a jump from Rice to Ohio State. They played Texas, so you've seen him have to do it against teams like the team Ohio State's going to open up the season against. But I'm still very interested to get a chance to see that all in person.
Yeah, and it's obviously very important to build up this offensive line. Now they've got a coaching staff where Tyler Bone has 2 assistants next to him who have, one of them has over 30 years of coaching experience at the Power 4 level. The other has like 10 years of experience at the Power 4 level. And then their QC guy's been a GA at Virginia Tech for 3 years. So they've got 4 guys working on that offensive line to get everybody and develop them at their best. Defensively, I think a lot of people want to watch C.J. Hicks, see how he does, because Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, I wonder, like, people seem to think they're known quantities at this point, even though really they're not, because they've played sparingly, but you've seen them for a long time do that. It's like, well, what do they do with 40 snaps? Now you're not going to see that today.
No,
but I think people want to see what C.J. Hicks looks like as a defensive end. You're going to get an opportunity to see Logan George, the transfer from Idaho State. He'll probably play quite a bit. Zion Grady, number 15, the true freshman. You'll see him. But overall, there will be no contact on these quarterbacks. I doubt they'll make Tavien St. Clair live like they did last week. But overall, we have not seen a ton of pass rush get to the quarterback, although the quarterback is made uncomfortable, but also that you can't hit the quarterback, so like it's a different kind of pass rush, so it's hard to judge all of this.
Right. There's uncomfortable, like, there's someone in my personal space, and there's uncomfortable, like, I'm slightly concerned that someone is going to run directly through me and atomize me, and those are 2 very different kinds of uncomfortable. They have made the quarterbacks live a little bit in practice, which is very unusual for Ryan Day this time of year, but he basically said, you kind of need to see. You need them to feel it. You need to see it. What do they look like when they know they're not basically in bubble wrap? You have to kind of feel that before you actually do it on the field live. I would be a little surprised if they had Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz live. I'd be fairly surprised if they did that. I'd be somewhat surprised if they had Tavien St. Clair live, but maybe. I mean, I was surprised a week ago, so I'm prepared to be surprised again. But that defensive line, man, there are some intriguing players there, but there's not, Kenyatta Jackson is about as proven as it gets, and you saw him play real meaningful minutes in some games, and you saw him get some real meaningful pressure, like in the national championship game. So he can do it, but now you got to do it without Jack Sawyer on the other side, or JT Tuimoloau on the other side, and without Tyleik Williams, and without Ty Hamilton, and that all makes things a little more complicated, because now he's probably the guy who people, opposing teams are going to be most focused on this year in terms of that defensive line. Edric Houston is someone I'm super intrigued to see again today, because we have seen him it was such a surprise to see him not only play as a true freshman, but change positions in the middle of the season and play meaningful snaps as a true freshman. That was an okay, like, you can have the 5-star pedigree, but when you see someone do that, it's like, okay, now yes, that's pretty good confirmation. I'm super intrigued to see him because we were watching practice yesterday, and so we were watching with someone who pointed out there was a play where he was on one side of the field, was getting blocked, and got all the way to the other side of the field to be in on the tackle. That is an incredible motor for a guy, an incredible speed for a guy that size. I think he's going to be someone who people are not talking about enough right now, but people are going to be talking about a bunch in a few months.
Well, and I go back to when Mark Gibler and Kevin Noon went on their Southern swing. It would have been 23 to talk to all of these Ohio State commits and see these future commits. And they went and watched Edric Houston, talked to Edric Houston. They went and watched Jeremiah Smith, talked to Jeremiah Smith. And Mark said that Edric Houston's the best athlete he's seen so far this year in this class. And Kevin's like, well, what about Jeremiah? And Mark's like, oh, yeah. Well, so like this is the kind of player
if that's a conversation, if you're in the conversation with Jeremiah Smith for literally anything,
right,
it's probably good.
And so the fact that he was able to, over the bye week, go from defensive end to backup 3 technique behind Tyleik Williams is indicative of that trajectory. And he's an incredible athlete and is comfortable and willing to do all of the dirty work that a defensive tackle needs to do, but also has that ability to pass rush against guards, which I think he likes. So watch him. Number 96, he still needs a number change at some point. And then 98, Caden McDonald, who you guys have seen for 2 years, brought in on short yardage. He's going to be your starting nose tackle, and he's been good this year. We've seen the offensive line, the running game and short yardage struggle when he's in there. So you'll see that once they get to some tackling portions of the game. But as we keep talking about it, the depth behind the interior guys, we'll see. And that may be something that they go into the portal about. I saw some of the questions about, are they going to go into the portal for defensive tackles? Probably, or they're going to be looking. And nothing that you see today is going to change anybody's minds one way or the other in terms of the coaches and what they need. But it would be nice to see some of these young guys, and not even young guys. Tywon Malone's a 5th-year guy. Will Smith is a 3rd-year guy now. So like these guys, even Eric Mentz is a redshirt freshman. So who's been here for 2 springs now. They need to see more out of these guys, and you'll get to see today if they can do that.
Yeah, the interior of the defensive line, it feels like the number ones, they feel so good about them with Edric Houston and Caden McDonald, and then, man, everything behind them, it's just kind of, you can see the question marks over people's heads, and we'll see what it looks like today. I'm fully expecting them to, and they've basically all but said, like, yeah, we'll evaluate portal stuff after the spring. I saw Mika ask about the defensive tackle portal, where things stand with that right now. The portal opens on April 16th. It closes on April 25th, I believe. I think it's like 9 or 10 days. And so you have a very limited window. It has not opened yet, so you have no idea who's going in right now. So you don't know what's the market going to be. Is there one good guy? Is there no one who's good enough to really materially improve things for Ohio State? Are there 7 players? Even if there are 7, there's going to be a lot of demand for those 7 players. I think that's probably the single biggest question mark for this Ohio State team right now is the depth at the interior defensive line position. Because I think you were hoping that some of the names you said, Tywon Malone, Jason Moore, Will Smith, Eric Mensah, whoever, that those guys would really take a big step forward this spring, and then you'd go from, well, this is a concern to, okay, it'll be okay, it's fine. I don't think you've seen that yet. You don't get the sense from the coaches that they've really seen it. It's you keep hearing about guys flashing, and guys flashing is like, oh, well, he made a nice play. You got to be able to do it consistently, and it doesn't sound like they're at the point where they feel like these guys have done it consistently enough. So I think that, to me, remains probably the single biggest concern. Quarterback obviously is the position that's like the biggest position on the field, and they don't have an answer there yet. But I think they probably feel more likely that they have the answer somewhere on the roster right now, rather than the call is coming from inside the house. Brackett's complimentary in terms of quarterback, and maybe not so in terms of defensive line depth in the interior of the line. So that's I think the one of the things that I'm going to be watching for most. With the highest interest over the next 10 to 14 days or so is who goes into the portal on that defensive line. I'm sure they take an edge rusher too, but top of the wish list, I think, has to be interior guy.
Yeah, and maybe Nico Iamaleava will say, "I'm also a defensive lineman," and that will also increase his price. He'll want $8 million.
Could be. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about him in the chat there.
If you want to go, and this is an aside, maybe we'll get distracted. If you want to go and get a quarterback that is holding out, that is no different than if you are a person and you're an adult, you're a grown adult, and you end up dating or marrying somebody that cheated with you on their spouse, and then you get married, and then they cheat on you. Like, how could you cheat on me? If you go and sign a quarterback that is held out from his current team, expect him to hold out from you as well. Now, the other thing is, Nico is now one more season and he's NFL eligible.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, well, maybe I can go pro after this year with one good season as a redshirt sophomore. And as we know, that doesn't always go very well for those quarterbacks who try to just cash in after one good season. Even though he had he started last year, so he's got a bunch of starts, but I don't know that he's seasoned enough to do that, especially playing in Tennessee's offense for 1 year and then whoever's offense for another year. And I'm interested to know their spring game. I think is at 2:00 today.
Oh boy, yeah.
Do his teammates want him back? Do the coaches want him back? Because teammates are always like, well, you got to worry about yourself. You've got to do what's best for you. Well, we'll always accept somebody back. When it's your quarterback, though, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be very hard for him to show up today and
not get booed.
That seems to me like, man, that would be a very, very big, very, very tough thing, because you just skipped practice yesterday, and apparently it was a surprise. That to me felt a little like a crossing the Rubicon moment, where it's like, good luck coming back from this. And as far as where does he go, if you're trying to maximize your NIL right now, you go to Miami, or you go to Oregon, or you go, one of those places. If you're trying to get developed, you're probably going different places than that, and you're not going to be able to maximize both of those things necessarily. And you just saw Will Howard go from guy who people were kind of laughing and pointing when Ohio State took the guy who was maybe losing the starting job at Kansas State, and turned and now he has a national champion. He's getting a national championship ring today, and is going to be a second, third round pick, whatever it is. That's a pretty good outcome. Did he maximize his NIL? I don't know. There were probably other guys who made more money, but are not, did not have the season that he had, and did not boost their stock the way he did. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the trade-off, and we end up talking about Miami so much in this context, because it's like, you've said this since long before NIL. If a guy goes to Miami, it's like, great, I don't ever need to think about him again, because who gives a crap? Like, oh, congratulations, you're playing in the Champs Sports Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl, and you're going 8-4, and people are complaining you don't have enough swagger, and then the last time Miami had what's the stat on the skill talent at Miami? Like the last time they had a wide receiver draft in the first round, or
it's like one player in the last 15 or 17 years, or two. One's a tight end, and one is like not Roscoe Parrish, but something like that, where it's like, just one of their random little receivers. But yeah, Miami is college football NPC. Like, they're just walking around the sidewalks, and you don't even have to interact with them. I guess let's finish up with Ohio State linebackers. I don't know that you may see Sonny Styles. You see him on the sideline, so look from there. Number 6, big guy. Number 8, Arvell Reese, new number, still big. He'll be in the middle for a little bit, but then I think some of the guys that you can watch for, 26, Peyton Pierce has had a very good spring, and then the 2 freshmen, Riley Pettyjohn, number 20, 17 is TJ Alford, and number 33 is Eli Lee. Those guys, I assume, will play quite a bit in the second half. So they'll be the ones trying to tackle Bo Jackson, and we won't get to see Isaiah West, but you will see a couple of walk-ons on there, whatever walk-ons are now. You'll see them plenty in the second half. And then in the secondary time, what are you looking for? Who are you looking for? Jermaine Matthews has been spectacular. We'll see how long he's out there. Malik Hartford's been with the ones. You're not going to see much of Caleb Downs. But what are you looking for in the secondary?
You pointed this out yesterday. You brought this up because we had seen Jermaine Matthews making all these great plays this spring. And in my head, I'm going, wow, Jermaine Matthews is having a really good spring. And you said, I wonder if people keep throwing at Jermaine Matthews because they don't feel like they can throw Davis Igbenogson. And I kind of went, huh. And it's a really good point. So I'm really interested to see, what does Davis Igbenogson look like today? Because if you were, there are officials at practice and they will throw flags. And we, I don't think, have seen him flagged at any of the practices we've been at this spring. So, the talent is obviously there. It was really just kind of like, do you trust yourself? And if they have gotten him to the point where he trusts himself and you're not making some of the penalties that he's gotten called for over the years, that's a potentially pretty significant change. In terms of also in terms of the corners, the younger guys, second-year guys, first-year guys, Aaron Scott, Bryce West, and Tavien Sanchez, three guys who are second-year or first-year guys. Scott and Sanchez have been working outside with the twos pretty much exclusively, and Bryce West has been working in the nickel spot with the twos behind Lorenzo Styles. This is a good enough Ohio State wide receiver core that even if the twos are in there, you've got multiple quarterbacks. Whoever the number 2 quarterback is pretty darn good also, and just as good as whoever the number 1 quarterback is right now. You're going to get tested out there. I'm very interested to see what Tavien Sanchez looks like, what Aaron Scott looks like, because those two guys, one of them is going to get leaned on. They will try and have 3 or 4 cornerbacks that they trust, because if someone gets hurt, you don't want these guys out there for 65 snaps a game. So you're going to be rotating guys. What does that depth look like there? That's really interesting to me. And then safety, I'm not expecting to see much of Caleb Downs at all, which is fine.
Running back, maybe?
We did see him trying to return punts yesterday, so that's something. But I think that's going to open things up for a real apples to apples of Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford, where things stand there. I think my sense, and you talked about this yesterday, is that Malik Hartford may be a little bit ahead based on sort of what we've seen right now. But this is a real good chance for a real apples-to-apples comparison of those two guys. And that's another one where you're probably going to see both of those guys on the field at the same time this fall, even if Caleb Downs is perfectly healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, no, keep an eye on number 10, Fahim Delane, true freshman. He's out there, and we've seen him make some. He's involved in the plays. Special teams, I would assume they're going to try to put as much pressure on Jaden Fielding as they can again. Place kicker. He had a good day yesterday, kicking in some chilly conditions. But this is an opportunity for them to have him out there with the crowd and dealing with that aspect of it. He's healthy now. He's been looking good. So watch for that. We have any questions that we want to?
We do. I'm scrolling through right now. Here's a great one. We'll be tuned into the Tennessee spring game like it's an episode of Maury. Yeah, you are not the quarterback. That is a tremendous, tremendous line. Apparently, the Tennessee spring game is not on TV. The Ohio State spring game will be on Big Ten Network. That's at noon. Sue wants to know if we know how many tickets were sold for today. I asked earlier in the week and they did not have a number. I'm guessing this is going to be a smaller crowd than the typical year. I think that the marketing of this as the spring showcase versus the spring game probably scared some folks away early. It's a nice day weather-wise, but it's not. It's been 65 degrees and sunny and not 52 degrees and sunny, and that probably makes a little bit of a difference.
It's not the kind of weather that brings people at the whim. What, it's going to be 74. Let's go. Let's just go. It's going to be 50. So you're going to have fewer people say, well, let's just go. Let's have a day.
Yeah.
In my mind right now, I'm thinking 50,000, and it's not great, but
I mean that's also probably third highest in the nation or something like that. I mean, this is an event at Ohio State every year where they get 100,000 for this at least once, and they've typically been in the 70, 80, maybe 90,000. That's not the norm nationally. That's Ohio State and Nebraska, and that's about it. Even the southern places where
Alabama's
it just means more.
A-Day.
Yeah, Alabama's A-Day is usually pretty big, but a lot of the places in the South where it's it just means more is it just means 40,000. Like that's kind of the norm, because this is this is just kind of a major event in Columbus. It has been over the years. I think you're going to see a little bit of a step back, and I think there will probably be some lessons learned from that. But I'm not expecting. This is not like, oh look, we're measuring things. Michigan, for whatever reason, spring game is just not a thing at Michigan. It has just sort of never been a thing at Michigan, and they'll get 15,000 for a spring game, and that's just sort of the norm. For whatever reason, it just hasn't become a thing there. That's not good. That's not bad. That just hasn't become a thing there in the way it has at Ohio State. I think this is going to be a very good crowd for top 25 nationally kind of thing, but it's not going to be the typical Ohio State crowd. Would be my guess. So Doozy wants to know, will there be any recruits here for the spring game? The answer is, oh boy, yes. There will be a whole lot of recruits here. I think Felix Ojo, who's the 5-star offensive tackle out of Texas, I believe he was just here the last 2 days. I don't think he's here today, but we saw a bunch of recruits here yesterday. There are going to be enough recruits here today that I may put up a separate photo gallery just of recruits, because this is a very, very busy recruiting weekend, because you get a chance to bring these guys in, and there's not the pressure to, after the game, like, okay, we got to turn the page because we've got Penn State on deck or whatever. It's okay. Spring's over. Everyone can kind of take a deep breath, so you can bring guys in, and there's not a ton. There's not the pressure to win this game. Normally, you bring guys in for a big game, and it's like, well, okay, Penn State's coming to town. This is a really big game, but we have all these recruits in town, and you can't spend the time with them that you because you're trying to win this game, and then you're also trying to turn the page to the next game. Spring game it's very laid back. Guys have been in here for several days. We saw a bunch of guys at practice yesterday. So there are a ton of recruits here. Some in-state folks that I would say I have been saying for a couple weeks now, like, oh, we should maybe pre-record a show, because I think this guy might commit real soon. There's an in-state guy who's here back for like the 4th time in a month or something like that, which is like, okay, I feel like we all know where this is headed. But so we'll I'm sure be talking about a bunch of that. Tanya wants to know, first time in the shoe this year, any changes to look forward to? If you saw me looking over my shoulder before, I was checking to see if the 2024 National Championship sign was up. It is not. Typically, most of the changes that they do structurally to the stadium happen over the summer. Like after the spring, that's typically when they'll do a lot of the construction and put up the new signage and put the new vendors downstairs, the new, hey, there's a new hot dog place, hey, they're selling a different beer, whatever. That typically happens for the season, not for the spring game. So I have not seen any like major changes.
And they're going to be working on the 1922 club or whatever. Will that be done by the season, or is that a next year thing?
I think that's a next year.
It doesn't apply to me.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm not really, I'm not the big donor, so I'm not really following that one closely.
If the 1922 club does apply to you, leave us a super chat right now. Robert Howard says, just remember, everyone, it's a spring game. Whatever you do, draw all definitive conclusions about the team. Now, listen.
That is correct. 100%.
Oh, no, 80%. You only can draw negative conclusions. You're only doomed. If it looks good, that doesn't mean anything. If it looks bad, it means you're doomed. And I will remind everyone, the offense is usually behind the defense this time of year. So the passing game, you're going to look at the passing game and go, this doesn't look like it did at the end of last year. Yeah, it sure won't. I can promise you, it sure won't.
And if it does, that's the defense's fault.
Yeah, oh boy, then the defense is doomed.
Where's that pass rush? Where's that pass defense? Let's jump off a cliff.
Joe wants to know, what time is the game? The kickoff is at noon, and it is on Big Ten Network.
12 p.m. Ohio time.
12 p.m. Ohio time, yes. Warpug wants to know bold predictions. Yes, we did a whole show on that.
Well, and we did. We had we each did a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer, and a 3-pointer. And I can tell you that I don't recall off the top of my head exactly what they were, but I can bring them up here just so we can get out there for everybody.
Yep. I can. I'll pull up mine, which was my number one. My 1-pointer, we just did a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer, 3-pointer. My 1-pointer was Bo Jackson finishes with more than 34 yards rushing, including a run of at least 17 yards. Okay. My 2-pointer was that C.J. Hicks will have 2 sacks. And my 3-pointer was there is going to be exactly 1 touchdown pass in the game, and Lincoln Kienholz will throw.
But it cannot be to Brandon Ennis or Max Clair.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Unless he throws it to someone else for the second touchdown. So, like, if Like, so you would need two.
The first one doesn't count
Right.
if it's to Innis or Clair. Yes.
And the Bo Jackson, you did mention that there needed to be a 17-yard run in there, right?
Yes, finishes with more than 34 yards, including a run of at least 17.
All right. So my one-pointer was that Tavien St. Clair has the long pass play of the day.
Mm-hmm.
My two-pointer is Bo Jackson scores twice.
Mm-hmm.
And my three-pointer is that Devin Sanchez or Jalen McLean have a pick six. And you foolishly did not say, like, well, what if they both have one? I should cancel it out. That is why you are playing checkers while I am playing chess.
Hey, and on that show, we also talked about last year's season 1 bowl predictions. And it turns out, despite the fact that Tony was trying to play, I don't know what these words mean, a listener did helpfully dig up the old original episode and clarified, yes, I did, in fact, win. Comfortably, in fact, by multiple points, because...
When you say I don't know what these words mean, you're mislabeling. I didn't know what my notes meant.
Mm-hmm.
I know the words, what they mean. I just didn't know how they applied in this instance. So.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing the research on that one, not Tom.
A couple of more quick ones from Warpug. Really curious to see the difference between last year and this year insofar as the offensive and defensive play calling. I'm interested to see, where is Brian Hartline?
Yeah, well,
is Brian Hartline on the sideline? Is Brian Hartline up in the box? And that's going to be, because it feels like either Tyler Bowen or Brian Hartline needs to be up in the box, probably.
Well, and the thing is, Tyler Bowen could be, because he's got a bunch of offensive line assistants.
Yes.
Or, those two guys also have been around for a long time, so maybe one of those guys will be up in the box, maybe two. Who knows how they do it, but this was supposed to be the dry run for what it would look like in the season, or for them to determine, no, we don't like this.
Yeah.
We're going to do something else. I think he's going to be upstairs.
It would make a lot of sense for him to be upstairs because you have Devin Jordan, who is the sort of assistant wide receivers coach. He's been here a long time. He's very well respected. He can absolutely handle the position group responsibilities there. You have Ryan Day on the sidelines. Ryan Day is going to want to talk to someone upstairs just to, here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? And you don't want that many guys. You don't want the too many cooks issue on the headset. And we're really getting into minutia here, but the coaches have talked about, you have this very limited window of time between plays, where the play ends. You got to kind of already know what you want to do next, because you can't be going, okay, we gained 3 yards. Okay, let's see. So now it's 2nd and 7. So are we going to run the ball? Or are we going to pass the ball? Well, what have they been? What did they show us on that last play? You want someone to just be able to be upstairs who's in at least some sort of a decision-making capacity. You don't want all the decision-makers on the sideline necessarily. And then you also have you have all the, if you're asking someone a question upstairs, okay, then that takes some time. Then it takes some time to get an answer. It just feels to me like it makes sense to have your coordinators upstairs, and I think they have the resources to allow Brian Hartline to do that, but we'll see. And then Matt Patricia on the other side of the ball, I don't know how much you're really going to see in terms of. I'll be interested to talk to Ross Fulton after this, and what did we really learn about the Ohio State defense? And the answer might not be a ton schematically because you're still relatively early on. But I'm going to be interested to know, what are they doing differently this spring with certain guys, or
what stands out?
Yeah, right. What did you learn? Because you're not going to know. You're not going to be able to look at this and go, okay, well, here's exactly what they're going to do this fall, because guess what? Other people have TVs too. They have TVs in the states of Michigan and Pennsylvania and Oregon and Washington and all of those places. So whatever you show on TV today is going to get watched and dissected by all these other folks as well. So they're not going to show a ton, but what's different, what's new, and what could it potentially mean moving forward? That's kind of interesting to me. And then last one from Sue. She wants to know, will they unveil the new championship banner today? No, where they have the national championship years up on the facing of CDEC. There is nothing after 2014. I was turning around. If you saw me turning around and looking behind me earlier, I was looking for that, and there's nothing there. That I think they'll probably do at the Texas game. I would guess they are
Texas's smug faces.
Just. Why do they have Cotton Bowl champions up there on the facing of CDEC all of a sudden? Well, they will, however, have the national championship ring celebration. I'm looking forward to seeing those. I will try and do my best to get a good close-up picture for you guys. I'm guessing you'll do that at halftime. Probably it would be a good time for them to do it, but try and get a good close-up picture of some of those rings for you, and we'll throw that on BuckeyeHuddle.com.
All right, so there you go. I want to thank you all for tuning in. hit the thumbs up if you've not yet done so. We would appreciate that. Of course, we will have some semblance of a post-game show immediately after the spring game, so you can tune into youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle for that as well. And as always, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up now. Check us out there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. We'd love to talk to you there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys